Hello friends, it is Link the Gulf Coast Gardener. Today is Wednesday, August the 21st, and I've been getting the yard cleaned up after the recent storms and floods and high winds and even a blasting hot suns recently. So I thought I'd do a quick run through of this side of the house and show you what we've been learning about plants that will survive saltwater floods. So the first ones we're looking at, these are my star jasmine. These are a couple of years old, and they are doing just fine. They got a little beat up by the wind and the salt water, but you know what? Lots of new green leaves. They're doing really well. I've got several of these star jasmine growing up the side of the house, doing really well. Now down here, we've got some birds of paradise. I planted these when I first moved to Jamaica Beach over 6 years ago. They've been through basically a freeze every year where they freeze back to the ground. They've been through at least 3 saltwater floods, 2 this year, at least 1 before, maybe more than 3. And you know what? They really don't even lose their greenery that much. I mean, these are still, they're evergreen right through a flood, like 6 to 12 inches of water around the bottom of the plants. They're really tough leaves, and they're a great plant for your Gulf Coast Zone 9B. Now, in a perfect world, you'll plant them out in your yard where they get completely full sun and they will flower a lot more and get bigger. But these are the red flowered birds of paradise. I can't speak for the ones with the white flowers. They have larger banana leaf-like plants, and I don't know if they would also survive saltwater floods. The leaves are a little more tender, whereas these are really tough leaves. So the orange birds of paradise do really well down here. More of the star jasmine, more birds of paradise, more star jasmine. Here's a really pretty one. This is how I really like them to look. Nice plant. I did prune it up quite a bit yesterday. They do take some maintenance. So you don't just plant these and forget them. Have your shears and wear gloves. They make this kind of white stuff whenever you cut on them, so which is kind of sticky. So get yourself some gloves when you're cleaning up your star jasmine. Another bird of paradise. That's a relatively new one that's actually not doing that well. Probably will not plant any more of these net new plants, but I definitely like the ones that are established. Now back here, this is my giant leopard plant. This gets huge. This is really more of a container plant or something you grow in full shade. This is on the west side of the house, and it actually flourishes here because it gets shade from the other plants. So giant leopard plant is coming back from 2 saltwater floods. So, you know, I can't say that you'll have the same luck that I've had with these plants, but if my experience is any indicator, these should do just fine. Now, this is a Peggy Martin Rose. If you know the story of Peggy Martin Rose, you know that it is famous for surviving one of the bad hurricanes that hit Louisiana, and it was recovered after being under, I don't know, 10 feet of salt water, and it's known to be the saltwater tolerant, hurricane tolerant rose. And check it out, mine are doing great. Again, 6 to 12 inches of water, 2 different occasions, and look, it looks just fine. It's got all these new green leaves. The wind beat it up a bit, but you know, it's doing great. And look, I've even got flowers. This flowers in the spring as well as in the fall. These delicate little white and pink flowers and light pink flowers. Really happy with these guys. I might have to get a couple of more going. Now backing up, this is where my beloved patch of Victoria Blue Salvia resided for several years. I start these from seed every year. I sell a ton of the plants. They self-seed readily, and it's just a superstar. This is the full blasting sun. The sun sets right over there. So this is really the hottest part of the yard. And I really didn't water them that much, if ever. They're very, very sturdy plants. They get pretty tall, really tough stems. You cut them back a couple of times a year. I'll put a picture up here so you can see the beautiful patch that I had. But the salt water did finally do them in. Honestly, when I was cleaning up this bed yesterday, I found one plant with some new growth on it. I was a bit shocked, but I don't feel like waiting for these kind of plants to come back to where they were. They grow so fast, excuse me, from seed. I'll start more seed. I'll have a beautiful patch here by October, no problem. And I'm really happy to see this. This is a volunteer tomato. This is from I had a bunch of tomatoes growing behind me in the raised bed, and one of the seeds made its way over here. I actually do recognize this plant. It was a hybrid, so I have no idea what the tomatoes are going to look like, but this looks like I think this is the better bush tomato that I grew this year. That's what it looks like. Maybe it's the Husky Red. It's one of those two. But hopefully I'll get some tomatoes. That'll be my first fall tomato from that volunteer, which is always fun. Now this has been a bit of a revelation for me this year. This is African blue basil. A neighbor actually gave me these plants. I was talking about it on my Facebook page or somewhere, and someone heard me talking about it, and they dropped these off. And this thing is absolutely covered in honeybees. It's one of the few things I have that's still flowering profusely, and it's been doing so all summer. The heat is no problem. You can imagine it doesn't worry about the heat, being called an African plant. It is beautiful. It's been covered in flowers all summer. It's just going to keep flowering. The bees love it. It is a basil, so you can use it in cooking. It's not like your classic Genovese basil, but it does smell incredible, and you can grow it for culinary uses. I typically just grow a basil just for ornamental value because I love them and because the pollinators love them as well. And I don't know if you can see the bees, but there are 20 or 30 bees buzzing around this plant at all times, and it's still putting on new blooms. If I get in a little closer here, let me focus on that. Check it out. So there's a bee just flew by. So I could go back. I can trim all of these flowers off, and I'll still have more flowers coming until right up into frost. Now, this is a sterile plant. It does not make seed, so it's not going to self-seed, which is good if you don't want these things spreading everywhere. But also, I do like plants that make seeds. So the only way to replicate these things is through a cutting. And so I've got some cuttings up in water right now. I'm hoping they're going to set roots. So if you're in the neighborhood and you're interested in some African blue basil cuttings to get started on your property, just let me know. I'm usually outside in the mornings before 9. I'm always outside on the weekends if we're at home, which is usually. Just let me know. Put a note under the video, make a comment, send me an email, send me a text, and I can get you some of these cuttings as well. And you can also overwinter these plants, apparently, just like a pepper. So they won't survive a freeze, but I understand if you cut them back, dig up the plant, cut them way back, they should go dormant. I'm going to put these plants in the garage, and hopefully they'll survive the winter, and I'll be off to a great start come the spring. Now over here on this side of the garage, I'm really happy with how all this is doing. After the floods, after the freezes we've had, I have some plants that are still doing really well. Now, none of these, there's only one native plant in this bunch, and I'll talk about it. It's the last one at the end of the row. And I really do want to start growing more native plants, but I also want plants that will survive in my area. So I have to expect really high heat. I have to expect storms. I expect a freeze or two every year. And where I'm at on Jamaica Beach, I get high water. I've had 2 floods this year. I've had floods before. I'll show you a picture. You can see what it looked like here just, a month ago. And so I need plants that will survive salt water. And I can tell you from my experience, all of these will. Now, this is Bougainvillea. We initially had these in pots up on the deck, and they did really well. They're actually a really great container plant. If you need something for a hot deck that doesn't need a lot of maintenance other than just regular water, Bougainvillea is a good option. Flowers prolifically. It's beautiful. It climbs. It's really nice. It does have thorns, so be aware. But we just kind of got tired of it. It froze back over a couple of winters ago, and I actually thought they were dead. I brought those pots downstairs. I dumped that giant root ball right here in this spot, these 2 plants. And I left it there. I just didn't have time to compost. I was going to chop it up and get rid of them. And they started growing again. So I said, So they survived freezes as well. I planted them here. You can see they're doing really well. And they're doing great after the flood. They really didn't show any ill effects from the 2 saltwater floods we had. I expect they're going to flower some more this year. So Bougainvillea is an option for your hottest part of your yard where you might get some salt water. And these are these are Mexican oleander. I talk about these plants all the time. It's probably getting old, but I just love these plants. They're absolutely beautiful. They come in a couple of different varieties. One of them has these really pretty yellow flowers, and the version I have has these peach color flowers. And the bees love it. These big black carpenter bees are always around these plants. They fly inside the flower. He just flew right inside there. Check it out. Anyway, the bees are always on these plants. They do really well in full sun. I really don't water them really ever that I can think of, unless I'm wandering by with a hose, but I don't intentionally water these plants. Once they start flowering, the next step will be to make seed, and they make a lot of seed, and then you can start raising your own plants. I have raised probably 100 of these, maybe 200 from the original plant that my neighbor Jack gave me when we first moved in. We affectionately call this Jack's Mexican Oleander because he gave me the plant and I was able to get it established and then start creating new plants. Now they're growing all over Jamaica Beach. Heck, they're growing all around Galveston, all from that first plant that Jack gave me that I was able to propagate via seed. So get it established, start saving your seed, and then if it freezes back in the winter, just start more plants. Always get these things going. You can have a constant cycle of new plants coming on. They're really easy to grow from seed. So Mexican Oleander, love these guys. Now these are a couple of more plants, also given to me by a neighbor. These were given to me by my friend Ron, Ron Wooten. Thank you, Ron, if you're watching. Appreciate it. One of these, this is a Mexican Petunia on this side, and it flowers profusely. It's a little beat up by the wind, as you can see, but you know what? It flowers a ton. It comes back from freezes, and it's survived the saltwater floods just fine. Now I did do quite a bit of cleanup on it yesterday, and you got to keep these guys under control. They will literally take over your entire property if you let them, which I don't. So just dig up around the edges, get you some sturdy clippers, clip the random branches that are sticking out and starting to look unseemly, and you can keep these under control. Look, this is a beautiful little clump of plants. Maybe there's one in there, maybe 2 or 3, I forget how many I planted, but it's a beautiful flowering perennial that will survive everything that my Gulf Coast Zone 9B throws at it. Floods, freezes, high winds, high temperatures, no problem. And next to it, these are spider lilies. They make the most beautiful white flowers, which I'll put a picture up here. I had 1 or 2 in gallon pots, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know where to put them. I just moved them around in containers forever until I plopped them over here, and it looks like I picked a good spot. They're doing really well. I just cut off some expired blooms yesterday. Maybe I'll put a picture of the flower up here. Really pretty, unusual flowers. But again, survive freezes, survive floods, survives full sun, doesn't need a lot of maintenance. Just keep them weeded. Maybe mulch them in with some grass clippings, which I'll be doing later today. Fertilize maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. I honestly forget to fertilize this stuff. I would love, as I mentioned before, I'd love to have plenty of Texas native plants, but I also need stuff that I can just plant and forget about, and don't have to think about replacing them every year. It gets so old. And down on the end, I do have one native plant. This is a mist flower. Now this is not giving native plants a very good name. Normally this is a beautiful patch of solid purplish blue flowers. I'll put a picture up here. It grows really quickly, it spreads quickly, but it was so infested with dollarweed, which is the bane of our existence here in Jamaica Beach, that I just had to get in with a shovel and dig everything up, and I ended up accidentally pulling up a plant. Honestly, these things are so tough. I'll just clip that back and water it in again, and it'll actually grow back no matter how bad that looks. But these are wonderful plants. They spread readily. They seed themselves. Pollinators love mist flower. Now, this is the native mist flower that I picked up, that I started from seed, that I got the seed from Prairie Moon Nursery. They're kind of hard to start from seed, so maybe if you're looking for mist flower, check with the nurseries. Usually what you'll find is something called Greg's mist flower, which is a hybrid, but it's still considered a native plant. It gets probably a little bit bigger than these native shorter varieties. So pick up some Greg's mist flower. Pollinators love it. Monarch, the butterflies especially love it. And then I was also watching this week about white mist flower, and the white mist flower looks fantastic. Something about white flowers that drives the pollinators crazy. So they love the basil, which has white flowers that we were looking at a minute ago. The white mist flower apparently drives them insane. And also I need to get some mountain mint started. I've tried a couple times and just unsuccessfully. I guess I'll just have to find plants, but those are some natives that should do well for you. Now this is what everything looked like yesterday. So it's been a chore to get things cleaned up. I need to get to work on this. Down here we have this is tropical milkweed, and I'm going to replace all of this tropical milkweed with butterfly bush, which is the native milkweed. I bought 2 trays of plugs from Prairie Moon Nursery. They have them on sale if you're interested. I mean, depending on when you're watching this video, I don't know if they'll still have them or if they're still on sale, but they're selling a tray of 150 for, a tray of 50 plugs for $150. And so that's $3 a plant, which is a really good deal when you think about it. And that includes shipping. Now these are going to be the little small plugs, but they'll grow fast and you'll have a big patch of native butterfly weed. I might have some extras if you're interested, depending on when you see this video. Let me know. Stop by the house if you know where I live. But you know what? If you have tropical milkweed, the point is they also survive the saltwater floods. So I've had tropical milkweed here for a couple of years when I couldn't get the others to grow, and I really want to support the monarchs, and I've raised a ton of butterflies using tropical milkweed, but it's best to use the native if possible, and I should have that established this year as well. Now over here in this raised bed, this was fun. Last year I fall planted flowers in a lot of places, including in this giant raised bed. So around October, I direct seeded this wildflower mix that I picked up from Wild Seed Farms outside Fredericksburg. This year, I'm going to get a mix called Be Happy from Seed Source maybe it's seedsource.org. It's called Native American Seeds. They raise their seeds here in Texas on a big seed farm outside Junction, Texas. You can buy them from their warehouse if you're in the New Braunfels area. I'm going to mail order a bunch of seed and direct seed these in October, and I'll have probably 30 or 40 or 50 different varieties that will pop up, which is what happened last year. I prefer this new variety that I'm going to plant this year. But this thing was covered in flowers all summer long. I had 10 or 20 or 30 different flowers popping up over the course of the summer. Started out with these gorgeous orange poppies. Early in spring, it was solid poppies. It was beautiful, but they were California poppies, and I want to really try to get some native plants growing here. I had Monarda for the first time. It was called lemon mint Monarda. It was so pretty. I'll throw a picture up here. The bees loved it. I'm actually going to buy some of that lemon mint Monarda, just a whole packet of seed, and start those directly because I want to have a ton of that. And most of the stuff burned up, but some of it didn't. Honestly, no idea. I've got 2 or 3 different varieties growing in here. I assume this is a plant from the mixed. It's just too pretty to be a weed, right? Now, I might be a fool and this might be a weed, but I just can't imagine that it is. So I'm hoping this is going to flower for me in the fall. If nothing else, I've got a great start on next year. There's another pretty little plant down here. Not sure if it's a weed. I'm guessing it's a wildflower. I've got several of those around here. I've got those 2 that are left, as you can see, and I've got a nice little patch of them here. Now over here, this is some sort of wildflower that's still going, a little pink flower on there. Not sure what that is, but these have survived the hurricane, the winds, and now the blasting hot sun. So I've got some wildflowers established over here, and I'm going to reseed it with a new mix in the fall. And when remember before I mentioned these beautiful Mexican oleanders over here, and I said they self-seed themselves? They create a lot of seed, which they do. Well, this is what you end up with when you start those seeds. I usually just start them in 4-inch pots. They usually germinate within a couple of weeks. Once they get big enough, I move them into a gallon. Once they outgrow those pots, I move them into the 3-gallon. This 3-gallon pot, this is the same size that I planted over on the side of the house. And the one on the side of the house is 20 times bigger. So that just shows you how fast they grow when you put them in the ground. So I've got 8 or 10 of these. If you're interested in those Mexican oleanders with the orange flowers, just let me know. Stop by the house, put a message under the video, send me a text, send me an email. If you're in the area, you know how to reach me. And I'd love to see some of these get established in your yard as well. And one final note, these are hollyhocks. I've never grown hollyhocks before. Look how pretty these flowers are. Now, not the dead ones in the background, but the pretty ones right here. Again, these were fall seeded plants. I planted this whole bed in flowers in October, and then they overwintered, they got established, and then I had hollyhocks that were 6 feet tall. You can see some of the stems. Look at these things. These are like tree stumps that I just left there, because when you leave the old stems in, look, you get these neat little things like this. The bees will make homes in there. They will raise their brood in there. So sometimes leave your old stems in your garden. I think it's actually really pretty. And it gives the native bees something to set up shop in. And I saved a ton of seed of these hollyhocks. Literally, I've got a whole lunch bag full of hollyhock seeds. So again, if you're still with me, 18 minutes and 24 seconds in, and you're interested in hollyhock seeds, let me know. You can put a note under the video. You know, if someone watches this a year from now and they want hollyhock seed, I probably won't have any more. But if you put a note under the video, make a comment, I will send you some of the hollyhock seeds that I've saved. I've already sent some to Maryland to one of my viewers, and they germinated quickly, so I know the seed are good. And I guess I'm just going to leave these here and see what they do. You know, hollyhocks are technically a biennial. You plant them and they flower basically 2 years later. Well, I guess I kind of do. When you plant them in the winter, you kind of move the clock up ahead. And I had the most gorgeous patch of red and pink and white hollyhocks, and here they're still here. After cutting them back, they started blooming again. So fall seed those flowers this year. Start thinking about it. Buy your seed now. Buy them in September. Heck, buy them now, because you may not be able to get the seed in September or October when you want to plant them. Direct seed in October. Spend $5 or $10 on seed, and you will end up with a beautiful flower patch in the spring and summer with almost no work involved. You just plant them, you keep them watered in until they get established, and then the next thing you know, you'll have beautiful flowers. Well, that's a quick trip through the garden. Thank you so much for watching. I am over 800 subscribers, which is pretty amazing, and I do appreciate everyone that subscribed and that watches my videos, and especially when you comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on plants that do well in the Gulf Coast Zone 9B. What will survive freezes? What will survive floods? What will survive hurricanes? Because, you know, we don't want to replace plants all the time. And of course, if you have friends that are into gardening, share the video with them. Ask them to like and subscribe. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. And of course, have yourself a fantastic day. Take care.